Hi there, everybody. Welcome back. Want to continue our focus on the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach, where Yaakov gets the news from his messengers that return to his camp that Esav is approaching him and wants to meet him and has 400 men with him. And the immediate reaction that Yaakov has to this news is Vayira Yaakov me'od vayetzer lo. Yaakov was greatly afraid of this encounter, and he was distressed. So the Midrash Tanchuma asks the following question: Lama shnei pe'amim? Why does the pasuk describing his reaction to the news that he got from the messengers that Esav is coming, why was his reaction? He was afraid, greatly afraid, and distressed. Why don't you say he was terribly afraid? And we'll probably presume that he's greatly distressed. Fear should encapsulate here everything that we need to know about Yaakov and what he's thinking and feeling. So the Midrash answers that we're told these two terms of Vayira, and Yaakov feared, and Vayetzer, and he was distressed. What do they each teach us? Vayira shelo yaharog, he was afraid that he would be killed by Esav. Understandable. Vayetzer, what does Vayetzer teach us? That he was distressed. Shelo yehareg, he was distressed because he did not want to kill. He did not want to be the one to kill, presumably here in some sort of self-defense. Now, why was he worried that that would even be a possibility? Wasn't Esav the mighty one and Yaakov is the weakling? And the answer is, Shahano, Shahaya Yaakov Gibor, Yaakov was mighty. How do we know this? Teidar Shalasar Hagadol Rafash. He was able to subdue and overpower the angel with whom he wrestles all night, which is later in this Parsha Vayishlach. And the Midrash quotes a pasuk from Hosea that Yaakov fought with the angel all night, and he cried, and he supplicated to him, showing again Yaakov's strength that he overcame in this situation. So the Midrash continues, Be'ota Shah, at that moment, when he hears this news and he has that reaction of fear and distress, Be'ota Shah hitchil mevakesh rachamim, he begins to plead to God for mercy. Shene'emar, as it says in the Torah, in verse 12 in the same chapter of Bereshit, Hatzileni na miyad achi, deliver me, I request of you, God, deliver me from the hand of my brother. Deliver me from the hand of my brother. That's what the Midrash teaches us. Now, why was it so important, at least according to the Midrash, to point out that he had a fear of being killed and the distress of killing? So the Siftei Chachamim, Rabbi Shabtai Bass, writes in his commentary, what exactly was Yaakov worried about? Because shouldn't he have nothing to worry about? If somebody comes to pursue you and is coming to, God forbid, is coming to murder us, the Torah gives us 100% permission. God gives us 100% permission to defend ourselves and to kill the one who is trying to kill us, to preserve my life. So what was he worried about? From a Torah and a halachic perspective, this is a perfectly okay act. Now, maybe it's a hard thing to actually go through with it, and it's distressing. But from the perspective of laws and morals and ethics, nothing to worry about. But the Siftei Chachamim says it wasn't about killing Esav that he was worried, because yes, that you're allowed to do. But Umashi Yaakov hayamit yarash shema yaharoghu anashim shel Esav. He was worried he was going to kill the other men of Esav, who they shehem lo ba'u laharog at Yaakov. They weren't there to kill Yaakov. Esav, wanted to kill Yaakov, and presumably if Esav was out of the way, right, they wouldn't care. Maybe they would actually wave the white flag and say, okay, we're with you, Jacob. We're with you, Yaakov. We're not going to try to touch you. And he was worried that the men, or the men he had on his side, that Yaakov had on his side, they would engage in a battle with Esav's people. And while he's able to deal with Esav, after he deals with Esav, in order to help one of his own men, as they're being pursued by the soldiers of Esav, Yaakov would halachically be required to try to stop the pursuers. If you see someone being pursued and they look like they are going to kill another person, you have a halachic obligation, if you are able to stop the pursuer. If that, and if you're able to stop the pursuer by even injuring them and allowing them, the one who is being pursued, to escape, so then you have a halachic mandate to do that. If you take too much force in protecting others, you didn't need to take the action that you took. You could have nearly injured him, given him a leg wound, and that would have slowed him down, and he could get some treatment and be alive, even though he was trying to do a terrible thing to the person being pursued. Nonetheless, the ruling of the Gemara is that you're liable for the death penalty for having taken too much force. And so what was Yaakov worried about? He was worried that he might end up killing somebody, mikoach bilbul ha-milchama, in the craziness of war. He might end up doing something and taking too much force, even though he was really just trying to save one of his fellow soldiers. This is what the Sifsei Chachamim draws up in trying to explain this midrash. And this explanation, I think, is actually really telling. Because this situation is what distresses Yaakov. It's not that he knows that he can't defend himself. He knows he can defend himself. But if he's going to take too much force in defending himself, or he can maybe diffuse the situation with lesser force, well, he's nervous that it won't come through, that he won't be able to successfully do that. And on one level, I think the message of this midrash is that as much as we should be worried about our own well-being, is we should be worried about how our actions affect the well-being of others. Are we being too strong in sometimes our response, in our reactions to things? Maybe we can legitimately defend ourselves, not just physically, but even from emotional attacks or verbal attacks. Is our response an appropriate response which also doesn't go too far? That we can diffuse the situation by inflicting the least amount of damage on the other person or other people involved. That is a moral that we must be thinking about, that needs to be on our conscience. And that's a hard one. We always actually, one of the special things about the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, is that they try to live this, where they try to make sure that they are protecting the state of Israel and its citizens, but also always trying to limit the amount of force, which sometimes, by the way, is a very, 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 very difficult line to walk. But that's why it's so commendable that they do that all the time. And so too in our own personal lives as individuals. How can we make sure that when we defend ourselves, in whatever the situation is, that when we defend ourselves, that we also remember the dignity of the other and try to not inflict more pain than needs to be done in our self-defense. And this is something that is the quality and characteristic of a Jew, that our stomach churns about this. So we're distressed about, will our defense of ourselves be appropriate and not over the top? And I think that's an amazing message. And I hope that we are all able to be successful in our own lives at being able to walk that fine line and defend ourselves. But in doing so, continue to respect and care about the dignity of the other.